No role plays, no conference calls, no BS. Chris and Lorenzo share 4 decades of combined experience to help you become a more effective leader. This is Hacking Your Leadership.
Hey, this is Chris from Hacking Your Leadership. On this discussion on employee engagement, I want to talk about a little bit of a follow-up on the engagement discussion we had 2 weeks ago. We talked about feedback and how giving feedback is a very important part of making sure employees feel engaged and remain engaged in their work. We had some listener feedback on that episode and on the importance of receiving feedback as a leader in terms of employee engagement, and how we had some listeners reach out and say that that their leader is actually very good at giving feedback and they do it well and it's received well by them and things are great from that standpoint, but the leader isn't necessarily great at receiving feedback, not in that they don't want people to give it to them or that people are scared to give it to them, but that they talk about it from a standpoint of, oh, that's fantastic. Thank you for the feedback. I love that. And they're very easy to give feedback to, but then nothing ever changes. And I thought that's a very interesting one because I have known leaders that do that. And it can be a tougher nut to crack a little bit, because when a leader is just not good at receiving feedback at all, at least you can call it out for what it is, right? If a leader seems like they're great at receiving feedback, but then it just seems like it's falling on deaf ears, that can be a problem. And so when it comes to making sure that your employees are engaged, if you as a leader are receiving feedback from them and you're not making changes, that's a problem. It's important because feedback is bidirectional. It always needs to be. Not every single session of feedback, but in a relationship, feedback is bidirectional because the relationship has to have some reciprocity to it. There has to be kind of like this symbiosis that occurs between a leader and an employee, and that will not happen if feedback isn't bidirectional. I love the feedback we got from listeners saying that, and I think it's a really great call out.
Yeah, it absolutely is imperative. If you're trying to build trust with a team and build a culture where, we talk a lot about psychological safety and the ability to have feedback and dialogue and debate and conversation, you have to have a space where people know that when they do share their thoughts and their opinions and or their feedback, that there is, number one, it's welcome. Number two, it's appreciated. Even if it's not agreed upon, but it's appreciated. And then number three, that there are actions that will be taken as a result of it when they can be. And again, I say when they can be because not all feedback can be addressed. You're going to have those situations where somebody is giving feedback on something that really only just pertains to them or a need that they need or that they have or that they want. And that can be really difficult if that's a change to a system or a process or something that's happening where a lot of people are impacted by that. And it may not be, something that can be kind of done for everyone or in that environment. Like we have to be real sometimes in some of the things that we ask for. But I think from a leadership standpoint, the most important part of that is like, do you create the space that allows for that dialogue to happen? Because I think sometimes when it comes to feedback or adjustment, we tend to either bucket it into like, here's what that leader needs to go do differently to make the employee feel more heard, more empowered, those types of things. And then sometimes the feedback is like, I want to change this thing, and like that thing will not be changed. And sometimes we have to as a leader we have to say like the answer is no,
right.
And here's the reason why it's no. But that is okay so long as it's clear. And so long as that it's not like a beating around the bush or trying to kick the can down the road or whatever, but like you're addressing it in the moment. But it is important, again, more that you allow the space to have the conversations and that people feel comfortable coming to you to provide feedback and that you do something with it, even if the thing that you do with it is simply say like, well, no, that's not going to happen.
Right. I think there are 3 different types here, and the easy ones are the very clear ones. It doesn't necessarily mean leaders are good at it. I'm saying the what should be gimmies here are the ones where you're given feedback as a leader and you instantly agree with it. Like what the person is saying, you're thinking to yourself, and this is feedback on you as a person, you as a leader, your leadership style, the way that you interact with people, the way that you lead a team, not feedback on, what a company policy is or what, something you have no control over, but something about feedback directed directly at you as a leader. If you hear it and you agree with it, that should be a gimme. And as long as you can check your ego at the door and say that, then making those changes, but asking for grace along the way. If it's something you've been doing one way for a long time and someone's giving you feedback that needs to change, being able to say, you know what, I agree with you. This isn't going to happen overnight, so I would like to ask for your partnership in pulling me aside if you see it happen. Know that I'm going to make an effort to do this as best I can, but I want your help. So please, if you see it out of me again, don't think that I thought you were wrong or that I don't think it needs to change. Know that I want it to change, and I would love your help in making that happen. And you will see steps, you will see change, but it's not going to be overnight necessarily if I've been doing it one way for a certain length of time. Ask for that grace and you will likely get it, and you will build a relationship with the person. But again, that's one of the gimmies. Another one of the gimmies is when you know something can't change, right? If a person is saying, I don't want to have a schedule. I want to be able to show up to work when I want to show up to work. Well, clearly that's not gonna happen, and that should be also a gimme. Where this becomes difficult for leaders, I think, is when you don't know what the answer is, and you want to validate a person for giving the feedback. And again, this is from listener responses that said, "Hey, my leader is great at receiving feedback. It's just nothing changes." I've been in situations personally where I've received feedback and I didn't know how to take it, meaning I didn't know whether that person was right or wrong. Clearly, it was their perception, so it was right to them. And I wanted to process it. I wanted to think about that. And then it just kind of goes by the wayside because I didn't really have a clear bucket to put it in, either, oh yeah, I agree, we need to change this, or this is not possible. It's the let's think this through and what this feedback means. If it falls into this category, you need to think it through and see what it means. And if it means following up with the person and asking more questions about it, telling them, hey, you know what? I've been thinking a lot about our last conversation. I'd like to know more because I'm having difficulty with it from this perspective or that perspective. I've never received this feedback before. You're the first person, but I believe you. So let's talk more about this. This is the follow-up or action that needs to happen. It's not necessarily that they give you feedback and you need to change it. If you disagree with the feedback, then don't change it without talking to them first. Talk it through with them. That's where the failure of leadership, I think, happens, is you end up disagreeing with the feedback, not in the moment, but later on, and you let it go by the wayside. I want to talk about some advice for leaders here on what they can do in these situations. But first, I want to give a word for one of our sponsors. All right, if you're a leader and you're receiving feedback from people and it's not a clear-cut style of feedback where you inherently 100% agree or disagree that it can be done at all, but it's something you have to think about, there's no such thing as receiving feedback like that is a one and done. It will require follow-up conversations. And if you're the one receiving the feedback, you need to be the one to follow up with the conversation. And this works the opposite way too. If your leader is giving you feedback that you have to think about and then you inherently disagree with, you need to follow up with them too and ask them to go into more detail about why that is. Did they just hear it from somebody or are they seeing it? Same thing. If you're getting feedback from somebody and they just are regurgitating it from somebody else, or it's based on their personal experience, talk that out with somebody, because the worst thing you can do is just ignore it, because you will give the impression that you don't follow up or take action on feedback, because their perception about what needs to change isn't going to change. They still think it needs to change out of you, and you can't ignore it. It has to be addressed. You have to come to an agreement about what needs to change, and whether or not there needs to be change. Otherwise, you will develop a brand of a person who is, seems like they're great at taking feedback, but then nothing ever changes.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think it's, and that's a bad place to be in, honestly, as a leader, is like when people feel that you're just kind of like, hearing them and just kind of like placating them and you're not being authentic and you're just, listening for the sake of listening. Like, people can read through some of that fakeness. And then what ends up happening over time is they just stop doing it. Then you don't get any feedback. Then you don't have any trust with the team, and they don't believe that you're going to do anything that you are going to say that you're going to go do. And that is one of the fastest ways to burn trust in a relationship and with the team.
Right. I've often said, and I absolutely believe, that the opposite of love isn't hate; it's apathy. So if you're getting feedback from somebody in a positive way and you think, oh, okay, this is a great relationship, and then all of a sudden that feedback turns to negative, like meaning the yelling and the screaming, like you never do this, that isn't a sign of a lack of love or care. It's a sign that they want this feedback to be actionable. They want you to change, and they're frustrated it's not changing. Where you really have a problem is when it just stops altogether. If you are not receiving feedback from your people, it means that they don't believe you have the ability to change it. And believe me, there's no such thing as a leader who doesn't need some feedback. There will always be feedback needed on something. And so, think about it from a leadership perspective. If it's been a while since you've received feedback on something, it doesn't mean that nothing needs to change. It means that people are not necessarily comfortable giving you feedback, or they think it's not going to be actionable. And so you might need to kind of start that ball rolling by reaching out to them directly and asking for it. I appreciate you all listening again to this discussion on employee engagement. Join us again next Thursday for another one. Have a great day.